experienced a mysterious ringing in your ears, then I have some news for you. You may not be aware of it, but it actually carries a deeper meaning. Keep watching, and you'll find out what it means. Be honest, if the universe wanted to reach you, would it really use words? Or would it use the one thing you can't ignore, that sudden, harmless burst of ringing in your ears that forces your attention inward for a split second? Because for chosen ones, that sound isn't random. It isn't meaningless. In fact, it has a way deeper meaning. But here's the part nobody ever talks about. The part that flips this entire phenomenon from annoying sound to cosmic signal. The ringing isn't coming from you. And if that sentence makes your chest tighten even a little, wait until you hear what's actually behind it. This is where the ringing really comes from. There's a layer of existence you were never taught to notice. Not a deity, not a being, not a voice, but a field. A silent, all-permeating field of awareness that everything rises out of. This includes intuition, timing, insight, instinct, clarity, even the moments where you just know. Spiritual traditions call it the monad. It's the source field behind consciousness itself. And if you've ever felt the pitch shift, rise, or suddenly sharpen, you're not imagining it. That's what happens when the boundary between you and the monad gets thin enough for the signal to leak through. And just to be clear, this is about those quick, harmless bursts of ringing, the ones that come and go on their own. If it ever becomes constant or uncomfortable, that's a different situation and worth getting checked out. But here's the thing no one expects, because the ringing isn't the message. It's the first doorway. When ringing shows up, it rarely chooses the loudest, busiest moments of your day. It slips in during the quiet ones, the moments when your mind relaxes, the world softens, and your awareness stops gripping onto tasks, deadlines, and noise. Chosen ones naturally spend more time in this unfiltered state because their attention isn't constantly swallowed by distraction. Their awareness isn't compressed or overcrowded, so it has more room to stretch, wander, and rise towards subtler layers of reality. This is why the ringing often comes when you're just waking up or drifting off into thought. It's the moment where the ordinary world loosens its grip and something deeper gently pushes forward. Think of it as reality taking a breath and you noticing the inhale before anyone else does. There's a simple but powerful truth behind all of this. The universe doesn't hide its signals. It hides them in the quiet. Most people never pause long enough to catch that shift, but you do. That's why these moments feel strange, sudden, or out of place. You're catching the exact instant awareness slips beneath the surface-level noise and brushes against something more raw and undiluted. And for a split second, the boundary between your inner world and the underlying field becomes thin enough for the signal to pass through. But the real reason this matters, the reason this ringing keeps happening to chosen ones specifically, has less to do with silence and everything to do with what your awareness is actually detecting in those moments. Awareness has senses that don't rely on the body at all. Chosen ones learn this early, often without realizing it. Their intuition sharpens before their logic explains it. Their perception widens before life gives them a reason. They reach out into subtle spaces, the edges of reality, simply because that's where their consciousness naturally gravitates. These edges are the places where energy, intention, and meaning gather before they become physical events or emotional realizations. And when you stand close to those edges, you feel things. before they fully take shape. The ringing shows up not because something is wrong, but because you're brushing against shifts that haven't arrived yet. It's like hearing a wave long before it reaches the shore. What seems like a small internal sound is actually the early tremor of something forming, aligning, or approaching. Chosen ones pick up these ripples months before others can make sense of them. That's why you often feel ahead of life, sensing the tone of change before the change itself appears. Being sensitive isn't a weakness, it's early access. The ringing marks the exact moment your awareness catches a future frequency, a subtle rise in the field that most people won't recognize until it becomes impossible to ignore. It's not about superstition or fantasy, it's about occupying a level of perception that notices the first cracks of a new reality forming. There's a reason the ringing feels stronger, clearer, and more frequent in your life lately. It's because the world is quietly shifting into a phase where intuition matters more than information. People are overloaded with facts, data, opinions, and endless noise, but none of that teaches them how to actually navigate their lives. Attuned souls, on the other hand, are built to move through reality using a completely different compass, one that responds to alignment, not pressure, clarity, not noise, awareness, not fear. This shift is happening now, in real time. You can feel it. You've probably noticed that the old way of operating, trying to think your way through everything, is slowly losing power. Something else is taking its place. A way of perceiving that doesn't rely on logic alone, but on sensing, knowing, noticing the subtle movements inside yourself that push you toward the right people, the right moments, the right changes. The ringing appears more intensely now because your consciousness is switching layers. You're moving from a survival-based awareness, where the mind constantly scans for problems, into a more aligned awareness, where the mind is guided rather than overwhelmed. This is why chosen ones feel this shift earlier than others. They're not more fragile or more sensitive, they're simply tuned into a different level of perception. They don't wait for life to collapse before changing. They sense the shift long before it arrives. Intuition activates long before logic understands what's happening. The ringing is one of the earliest signs that this new awareness is turning on. It's your consciousness preparing to operate from alignment rather than reaction. It's the inner signal that something in you is upgrading its position, stepping away from the frantic pace of the external world and closer to a more natural way of moving through reality. But what's actually happening in the moment you hear that ringing is even more fascinating when you understand how humans perceive reality in the first place. If you've ever experienced a mysterious ringing in your ears, then I have some news for you. You may not be aware of it, but it actually carries a deeper meaning. Keep watching,